So split toning, what is split toning? Split toning is basically when you inject, if you will, a certain color in the shadows and then usually also a complementary color in the highlights to achieve a certain mood, look and whatnot to help further separate your subject from the background. You're probably familiar with the teal and orange look, which is basically a split tone between orange and teal. And this look works very well with skin tones because skin tones are usually orange. And when you inject teal, which is the complementary color of orange, you help separate the subject or the skin tones from the background. So that's basically split toning in a nutshell, if you will. Now let me share with you how you can achieve this in DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to start with the built-in tools and then later on I'm going to move on to a paid DCTL plugin which makes everything a bit easier, quicker and also more precise. So first of all, here are my project settings. I'm using DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate color space and then my output color space is set to Rec. 9 type A because I'm grading on a MacBook. Here I have a simple node tree for the RDT and ODT. I'm going from Sony S-Log3 S-Gamut 3 Cine to DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. And then for the ODT, I'm using a DRT from JP2499. I've made a whole video about this. You can watch it right here. And you can also download this DRT completely for free down below. And this DRT basically takes me from DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate to Rec. 9 Gamma 2.4 because my display is set to Gamma 2.4 at the moment. And then here I have a couple of simple adjustment nodes. This is some balance adjustments, white balance adjustments, highlight recovery, exposure and contrast adjustments, saturation. Here is where I'm going to put the split tone effect later on. This is the enhancer, which I use basically as a look LUT, if you will. If you are interested in the enhancer, I'm going to leave a link for it down below with a 10% off discount code on all the enhancer products. And then finally, here I have a contrast node just to add further contrast in the shot. Also, I've downloaded this reference frame from the movie Thunderbolts because I think the split tone effect in here is going to work very well in my shot. And by having some reference frame, I can much easier explain to you why one tool is better than the other tool. So with that said, let's start. First of all, I just want to quickly analyze this frame. And here, as you can see, you have like a warm color going on in the highlights and it gradually transitions to a cooler tone, which creates a nice color separation again between the highlights and shadows. Whereas in my shot, everything looks boring and neutral basically. It can work in some situations, but if you want a more stylized and artistic look, having something like this, like a heavy split tone effect, it's definitely going to help. So let's try recreating this with the built-in tools and Resolve, and then later on I'm going to show you a paid DCTL plugin. So the first way you can create a split tone in Resolve is by using the color wheels. That's pretty much the easiest method, I would say. And here you have a wheel for the shadows, midtones and highlights, and you can basically inject any color that you want. So since I'm going for like a teal and orange effect, I'm going to subtract red and then maybe balance it out with the green and add a bit of warmth basically. And I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not really doing it precisely. Maybe I'm going to neutralize it with the midtones here and then do something like this. Something like that would work just fine, I think. And here is how it compares to the reference frame. It does look different, but if I'm going to do a before and after, there is definitely a significant difference. I feel like it's a bit too strong, so I'm going to dial it back to like 0.8, I would say. And now it looks okay. I did achieve a more stylized look with this. Maybe not as heavy as this reference frame, but it looks much closer. And it definitely makes the shot a little bit more interesting. But the reason why I don't like using this method is because one, as you can see, it heavily affects my skin tones. Like shifts the color of the skin tones. Also, it shifts the colors of the purest blacks in the frame. And then also the white. And if I want to like clean the blacks, clean the whites, or clean the skin tones, I can't really do it easily with these color wheels. I can add another node and maybe use the log wheels to subtract some, cyan in the shadows to clean up the shadows here. Maybe add a bit more warmth slightly. Maybe even clean up the skin tones, which are usually in the midtones, just to add a bit more warmth back to the skin tones, something like this. And now it definitely looks a bit cleaner. Here is a before and after, before and after. But it's not, you know, an easy process in my personal opinion, because you do need to add another node. You need to go to this wheel. And if you want to like change the color in the color wheels in here, you also have to go back to the log wheels and then readjust everything with the log wheels, which is pretty annoying. It does work, but it's a bit annoying in my opinion. And the next method that you can create a split-on effect in Resolve is by using the Film Creator plugin, which is free. If you use the studio version of Resolve, it's not available with the free version. And here you can reset the presets to clean slate, just to have everything clean basically. As you can see, if I'm going to enable and disable this node, it's not going to add anything to my shot. And if you go in here, you'll see like a split-on section. You can enable this, set the amount to whatever you want. Let's put it around halfway. And now you can basically, let's say, shift the hue angle to whatever hue you want. I'm gonna put it to something like the highlights in here. I'm just eyeballing it. I would say something like this works just fine. And then with the pivot, you can decide how much of one color is in the shadows, or in this case, the highlights. And then the other color, complementary color, is going to be on the shadows, which is blue. So you have blue on one end and yellow on the other end, basically two complementary colors. So I'm gonna play with this pivot slider until it looks somewhat similar to the reference frame, which is about here, I would say, like 0.315. Okay. And I think I actually nailed it pretty well. It's not as clean as the, you know, as the reference frame, but it looks relatively similar. Maybe the amount is a bit too much. Let me put it to like 0.45. And now let's see how it compares. Yeah, it does look fairly similar, but again, it heavily affects the skin, as you can see. Also, the shadows in here, which means that I again need to add another node, play with the log wheels to clean it up. And that's something that I don't really like doing because it is time consuming. So let me show you the next method, which is my favorite one to add a split-on effect in Resolve. Now let's go to the curves. And the reason why I love using the curves is because you can add as many points basically as you want in here and anchor the blacks, anchor the whites, anchor the middle gray, which is usually where the skin tones are. And also you can precisely push in or pull out colors from specific areas of the frame because of these points. So for example, if you want to keep the blacks neutral, you can add a point at the black area in here. So let's say everything in here I want to keep neutral. I'm going to just leave this point in here. And if I want to keep the whites neutral, I can just add another point in here. And by the way, if you hold the Option key on the keyboard while moving the point around, it's going to remain in the center and not move like this. So I can basically keep this point in here, and basically everything above this point is going to remain neutral, and I'm going to only add adjustments below this point in here and above the point in here, which is going to keep my blacks and whites fairly neutral. Now with middle gray, it's a bit more complex because I can't just, you know, guess where the middle gray is, but I can use a free DCTL for that. So let me add this, and this DCTL is called Pixel Tools Exposure Chart. It's completely free. I'm going to leave a link for it down below. And as you can see right away, it adds this DaVinci intermediate middle gray, and it shows this spike, which shows you exactly where the middle gray is. And if you are working in a different color space, you can, you know, set it to whatever you want. Let's say you are color grading in like Gamma 2.4 or like Arilog C4. It shows you exactly where the middle gray area is for this particular color space. So I'm going to set it to DaVinci intermediate. Then all I'm going to do is just make it a bit bigger to see everything a bit easier. Then I'm going to drag this point down, set it exactly here, and now basically I've locked my middle gray. But just to make a nice transition between the middle gray area and the shadows and the highlights, I'm going to add an extra point in here, and then another point in here, and this will make sure most of the middle gray area is going to remain as neutral as possible at least. And if of course you want to make it more neutral, you can, you know, set these 2 points further apart from each other, but I'm going to set it around here. I feel like it's going to be more than enough for this example. And basically, as you can see, I'm going to have clean whites, clean blacks, and also clean middle gray, which is usually where skin tones are. And now I can unlink these channels and basically inject any color that I want in the shadows and also in the highlights to create a clean looking split tone effect. So to add teal in the shadows, I'm going to use the red channel, subtract red, and look how beautifully actually it adds the color compared to the other tools, because I've set these points in here, right? So I'm going to add this teal in the shadows, maybe also play with the green, make it a bit more blue. And then I'm going to go to the blue channel and add a bit more warmth in the highlights. Maybe something like this, and add a bit more green. Let's compare it to the reference frame. I mean, it looks, wow, I actually nailed it right away, more or less. Maybe it's a bit too warm, right? Something like this looks relatively similar to the reference frame. Let me see here. Okay, I'm happy with this, honestly. I'm happy with this. And if I'm gonna go and zoom in to my skin and do a before and after, look how clean the skin tones, the majority of the skin tones remain after this adjustment. And this is only because I've set these anchors here in the middle gray area of the curve. So again, before, after, skin is relatively clean even after the addition of this split tone adjustment. And also if I'm gonna go to my blacks, it remains relatively clean. And also the whites remain relatively clean at the same time. But one reason I don't like, I mean 2 reasons actually, I don't like using the curves is because first, if I want to move this point in here for the whites, right, I can just lock everything and then move 1 point, because as you can see, it's just going to reset everything. I have to unlink the channels and then move the channels one by one. So this is the luminance, this is the red, this is the green, and this is the blue. So this is a bit annoying, and if I want to change the anchor point for the blacks, I will have to do it channel by channel, point by point basically, and with the middle gray it's pretty much the same thing. And also if I want to, I don't know, change a color, for example, I'll have to like, you know, manually drag these points around to quickly change the color. And if I want to go to like blue, for example, I have to like kind of, you know, pick for it here. And sometimes these points can be really next to each other, which is a bit annoying. So you would like try to click on the blue, but you by accident click on the green. And then it's like not moving exactly where you want. So this can be a bit tedious, but it is by far the best tool to use, in my opinion, to create a nice and clean split tone effect in DaVinci Resolve. So now let me show you what is the tool that I'm going to use from now on to create all of my split toning in DaVinci Resolve. And this is a paid DCTL by Pixel Tools. They sent it to me for free to make this video, but it's really awesome in my personal opinion. It works much better than all the other tools, and it's not too pricey for what it actually does, in my opinion at least. So let me add this. It's called the Pixel Tools Split Tone RGB or Hue. I'll show you the differences a bit later on. I'm going to add the RGB one at first, and I can close all this and just work with this DCTL. And basically here you have high, which is highlights, and then the shadows, and you have the red, green, and blue channels. You have here blend, just to decide how much of the effect you want to be on your frame. It goes from like 0 to 200, so you can precisely adjust how much of the split tone effect you want on your shot. And then the pivot is to pivot the middle gray basically, and neutral point, this is to keep the, you know, the middle gray clean. Clean blacks to clean up the blacks, clean up the whites. Saturation mask is to desaturate the brightest parts of the frame. So let me show you actually how it works in the real world basically. I'm going to enable the curves in here, which is going to show like a curve. And right away, as you can see, it locked the middle gray for us. It shows exactly where middle gray is for DaVinci Intermediate in here. And if you're working in a different color space, you can set it to whatever you want pretty much. But since I'm working in the DaVinci Intermediate color space, I'm just gonna leave it in here. And also you can enable here show ramp, and it's going to show you how much of one color you have in the shadows and also in the highlights. But for this, I'm just going to use the curve, and I'm going to put like teal in the shadows, just like I've done with the curves before, and then some warmth in the highlights, maybe a bit more green. Let me just see how it compares to the reference frame. Just going to do a quick comparison, and I think I've already nailed it kind of. But what I like about this is that, for example, I want to neutralize my middle gray. I just do this, and as you can see, it basically makes the transition between middle gray, highlights, and shadows a bit more strong, if you will. So I'm gonna set it to about here, 20. If you want to clean the blacks, you can use this slider, and you basically clean the blacks just like I did with the curves with the built-in tools in Resolve. But this here works with a slider, so you don't have to go point by point and basically adjust everything. Just push a slider, clean the whites, push the slider, clean the blacks, push a slider, clean the middle gray, or basically the skin tones. And if you want to change the color, you just go to the sliders again and just change the color. It's really simple in my personal opinion. It works in a much more intuitive way than the color wheels, than Film Creator, or even the curves in DaVinci Resolve. So again, here is how it compares to the reference frame. And you can also disable and enable it here. Looks very clean. If I'm gonna go to my skin, I'm gonna do a before and after. As you can see, my skin is not affected at all. It's really clean actually. And also I can dial in, you know, the blend, basically the intensity of the effect in here with the blend slider. Now let me show you how the hue one works. The hue one is basically the same. I mean, it's going to do the same thing, but it works more like the film look creator adjustment by letting you inject exactly the hue that you want visually. Meaning that if I'm going to put this strength here to 100 and for the low also 100, and again, then I'm going to enable the show patches. Here it's going to show like the color that you're going to inject in the shadows and highlights. And you can basically adjust this slider and see what color exactly you are putting in the highlights. So let's say I want to like a precise yellow color or like orange color, maybe something like this. And then you can precisely adjust the color for the shadows. And then here you can adjust whether the adjustment is subtractive or additive, which honestly, I'm not really sure what it is. If you have an explanation, please let us know down below, but you do have the slider in here. And then the same sliders as before. If you want to neutralize the middle gray, you can use this slider. If you want to clean the blacks, you can use this. Clean the whites, you can use this. And also saturation mask to desaturate, as you can see, the brightest parts of the frame. And you can also enable this highlight saturation mask to see exactly what you are desaturating with this slider in here. But I'm going to just leave it off because I think this looks much better like this. So basically the difference between the hue and RGB is with RGB you're working with RGB channels, but with the hue you basically eyeballing it by putting a certain color in the shadows and highlights. And now if you are more of an advanced user, you can use this RGB advanced or hue advanced adjustment, which is more or less the same as the basic one, but with more points on the curve basically. So with the other two you had 1 point for the lows, 1 point for the highs, and that's basically it. But with this you have low, low mid, mid, and high, which is going to give you a bit more precise adjustment to dial in the exact color that you want in the shadows, midtones, and highlights. So for example, I can like add teal in here, dial it back here. Maybe with the low mid, I'm going to also do the same thing. Something like this. I'm going to add a bit of warmth in the highlights and then a bit of green as well. And then more yellow in the highlights because I want to create nice separation. As you can see, it only like adds this effect to the brightest parts of the frame, which is exactly what I want. And then I can, you know, rebalance everything with this and get something like this. Obviously, I'm going to clean it up a bit in the midtones. You can clean the blacks as well. You can adjust the blend basically, like with the other two, but it's a bit more precise by having more points on the curve basically. So this is basically it. This is how you can achieve a beautiful split tone effect in DaVinci Resolve. I would highly recommend using the curves if you're only using the built-in tools in Resolve, because as you saw, that's the tool that works the best in terms of like providing clean skin tones, clean blacks, and also clean whites. But if you are willing to spend a little bit of money, check out the DCTL plugin from Pixel Tools. I think it is amazing. I'm going to leave a link for it down below. You have a demo version, and also if you are going to purchase this plugin through the link down below, you're going to get a 10% off discount code on the plugin. So check it out, use the demo, see if it works for you. I would highly recommend using it. I'm going to use it from now on. Pretty much color grade all of my videos because it just makes color grading a bit more fun and easy compared to using like the curves and the other tools, which are a bit more fiddly to use in my opinion. So hope you enjoyed this video and found it to be informative. If you have any questions, comments, or tips, let me know down below. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.